Good afternoon. You are all very welcome to Scale Ireland's annual autumn gathering. This is actually our fourth annual autumn gathering. My name is Martina Fitzgerald and I'm the CEO of Scale Ireland, which is the independent, not-for-profit representative organisation for Irish tech startups and scaling companies. And we have a full house here today, as you can see, and we're delighted to see so many of our founders and their teams, funders, the hubs, the universities, the state agencies, Enterprise Ireland, the Ireland Strategic Investment Fund, Science Foundation Ireland, and so on. We are so delighted that they can all make it today, and the Strategic Banking Corporation of Ireland. And I suppose also we'd like to thank our corporate partners and our partners for being with us today. And the turnout really does demonstrate the breadth of our community and the size of it, because we now have 750 members, making us the largest representative group for the Irish tech sector. Now, we are also delighted to be joined today by the Minister for Finance, Jack Chambers, and we know you're a little bit busy at the moment, but we're also delighted that you have made this one of the first main events that you're attending just ahead of the budget. So will you please give the Minister a round of applause? Now, we're also delighted that the Minister will be joined today by leaders in our sector, including Ciaran Cosgrave, the CEO of Nearform, Charlie Ardagh, the Head of Partnerships for Times, Sheelagh Brady, the CEO and co-founder of Kowroo, and also on our investor panel, we have Alan Merriman, the CEO, founder, and also head of venture for Elkstone. We have John O'Sullivan, general partner, ACT Venture Capital, and we have Angela Duffy, director of Resolve Partners. So will you all give them all a round of applause, please? And the Minister will be contributing to their discussions on the potential of this sector and also some of the challenges facing it. And the hashtag for today is Scale Ireland Gathering, hashtag Scale Ireland Gathering. Now, of course, this event, as it does every year, is taking place just ahead of the budget. And myself and Brian have already had very frank but also constructive engagement with the Minister and his officials. And I think it's really important to have that open and honest dialogue. And I think it's also worth noting that today it's about our members hearing directly from the Minister, and also that they have an opportunity to talk about their potential, their global potential in terms of their outreach, their markets and their revenues, and also some of the key challenges facing them that might help you ahead of the budget. And we should also note positively that we do welcome the 75 million increase in the Seed and Venture Capital Fund, which was recently announced by this government, because we had campaigned very strongly for it. And also that our members overwhelmingly welcomed in our State of Startup survey for 2024 the 5% increase in the R&D tax rate, which was very important and also aligns with the government's targets on R&D activity in the SME sector. And that is important. Now we hope on the other side of the ledger that revenue and the department will continue to review those enterprise schemes and supports for companies, because I don't think we necessarily need any more schemes and supports, but we do need the ones that are there to work. And I think many of them are set up to avoid abuse rather than use. And so many of our members can't avail of the schemes that they are supposed to benefit from. Now, more about that later. But I am going to shortly hand over to our chair, Brian Caulfield, who you all know very well, and he will introduce the Minister, and then we'll have two panel discussions with startup and scaling companies and also some leading investors. And the Minister will also contribute to those discussions, which is very important. Now, I do, first of all, want to get the ball rolling and get down to business and introduce our hosts, because we are very fortunate here in Scale Ireland. Ross O'Connor is the CFO of Avolon, and they have been a key partner of Scale Ireland from the very, very beginning, when we didn't have 750 members, when we didn't have any members at all. And that's really important. And we would like to really extend a special thanks to Ross, to Andy Cronin, the CEO, who is travelling today, and also to his predecessor, Donald Slattery, for their continued support of Scale Ireland and this sector. So without further ado, we'd like to welcome Ross to the podium to welcome us here to this fabulous building.
Tina. Thank you very much, and welcome to everyone, and thank you to the Scale Ireland team for organising a wonderful event today. So, Minister, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we are delighted. We're delighted at Avolon to be hosting this event again this year, an event which supports Irish startups and scaling companies in their aspiration to be global leaders, which is fantastic. And I want to commend the rapid growth of Scale Ireland as well, where, as you say, over 750 members now, being the largest representative body and organisation in the space, starting from 2019, I believe. So rapid growth and developing a leading position is something we're very happy and very proud to have achieved at Avolon, starting from 2010, actually when we started as a startup as well. We've grown to one of the leading positions in the aircraft leasing sector. We now own close to 600 aircraft flying around the world. We have another 450 on order, which gives us excellent growth into the next decade. From I suppose, an idea in 2010, we've built a business that's headquartered in Ireland, but has a balance sheet of $31 billion, has customers in 60 countries around the world, and is a business that ordered 200 aircraft from Boeing and Airbus last year, which, as I say, gives us not only growth, but ensures our success into the next decade that we're all very, very proud of. In terms of our panels today, I think Martina talked a little bit about the panels. I think the first panel has a number of companies that are at an earlier stage, maybe in their development than Avolon is now. And one of the things that certainly I've learned in terms of our journey is that culture and building a set of shared values is critically important to the success of any business. That's helped us through challenging times at Avolon, for sure. But it's also very relevant when we do hit milestones and we do have success, that it's all sweeter that you're sharing it as a team with a shared set of values and a shared belief. Everything that we achieve at Avolon is as a team, and that's a team with different views, with different genders, with different ethnicities, and with different perspectives and skills in the world. And it's about harnessing that mix that creates, in my view anyway, great companies. The second panel, as you say, is around investors. So investors are critical. There's no doubt about that. But it's the level of risk taking that investors take, and also their belief, I suppose, in the companies that are in this room, that's really, really critical to success. Being the CFO, certainly I know more than most how important collaborative and engaged investor relations are. We've had capital providers that supported us day one 15 years ago that are still partners today. And as I said, there's been speed bumps and lean times along the way, but actually having that collaborative approach where you have a shared view around delivering excellence to the customer, that's what's gotten us through and been able to, allowed us to thrive and profit along the way. To the Minister, I want to offer a special welcome and a congratulations on taking on the finance portfolio. I think you'll be familiar with Avolon from your Minister of Transportation days. And I think when we met, we had an extremely positive conversation. Certainly, from our perspective, we welcome the recognition that you have around the role of aviation in connecting people, and also its wider benefit in terms of developing social and economic benefits for Ireland in particular. As Minister for Transport, you established the Sustainable Aviation Fuel Task Force, which obviously is to develop and help develop the development of policy and to identify actions that will ensure Ireland plays its part in the decarbonisation of aviation. At Avolon, we have sought to take a leading role in supporting innovation as well, to bring the industry, the aviation industry, towards its ambition to be net zero by 2050. So we have partnered on a research program to explore how Ireland could become a production hub for aviation fuel or sustainable aviation fuel. We have invested in electric aviation actually as well, in a eVTOL company called Vertical Aerospace, which right now is building what could be described as the zero carbon air taxis of the future, which we're very excited about. And then more recently, we've partnered with Airbus on their Zero E program, which is focused on developing hydrogen-powered solutions for commercial aerospace. So we're very excited about all of those tasks. Now, as Minister for Finance, you'll be steering the economy, obviously, towards future growth, building on the strong position that the Irish economy is in. Inflation's falling. We've got incredibly high employment, and I think the government enjoys a surplus that's the envy of many governments around the world. So I wish you and certainly the wider government every success in building on that positive foundation. I think in particular, I want to take this opportunity to thank you and your predecessors, Michael McGrath and Pascal Donoghue, for the interest I think you've all taken in the aircraft leasing sector. Your support and the support of the wider government has really allowed this sector to flourish and for Ireland to build out an aircraft leasing hub that really is the envy of many countries globally. So thank you very much for that. So to conclude, I just want to thank you all again for coming, and it's a pleasure as always to host this event at Avolon. And I'd like to hand you over to Scale Ireland Chair Brian Caulfield. So over to you, Brian. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ross. I want to personally pay tribute to Avolon, firstly, for hosting us in this absolutely fabulous setting. There probably isn't a more perfect place to talk about Irish companies becoming global leaders. So we really appreciate that. Avolon is a world leader in its field. So thank you, Ross. And thank you also to Ross, Andy, and all the team at Avolon for their support from the very beginning. As Martina mentioned, Avolon was one of our very first supporters and has been one of our strongest. And that's because Andy, Ross, and all the Avolon team believe in our vision to make Ireland a leading location for innovation and entrepreneurship. We're holding today's event at a time when our latest State of Startup survey highlighted funding as the key issue facing startup and scaling companies yet again. 80% of founders and CEOs found it difficult or very difficult to secure funding. The 2023 Tech Ireland report showed that 2022 and 2023 were, on a global basis, the worst 2 years for venture capital investment since at least the global economic crisis of 2008, and probably since the dot-com crash of 2000. In Ireland, funding declined by 38% last year, and it was the first time total funding was below €1 billion since 2019. There was some good news with the recent publication of the IVCA's latest funding report. It showed venture capital funding in the second quarter was the second highest on record, up 7% on the same period last year. However, overall funding for the first 6 months fell by almost a quarter, and deals in the €5 to €10 million range fell by 44%. It's also worth noting that venture capital funding fell by nearly a half in the first quarter of 2024. Indeed, it was the worst quarter for funding in over 3 years. So it's vital that we continue to incentivize private investment into our startup and scaling companies through schemes such as the Employment Investment Incentive Scheme, which was subject to significant EU state aid changes this year. It's also important that consideration is given to leveraging a very small increase in the allocation of Irish pension funds into Irish innovation. even a small increase would have a significant positive impact on the availability of capital for high growth, innovative businesses, both through investment in venture capital, but we also strongly support proposals for a viable, strong stock exchange in Ireland. I want to thank the Minister for attending today. We've had very open meetings with him and his department on many key issues. I also want to thank the Minister for his attendance, which reinforces the government's commitment to the strategic potential of the Indigenous tech sector in terms of innovation, growth, exports, and employment right around the country. So we greatly appreciate this opportunity to discuss these important issues for our members with the Minister here today. So will you please give a warm round of applause to the Minister for Finance, Jack Chambers, who will now deliver his keynote address.
Thanks so much, and good afternoon to you all. And I appreciate Ross for hosting this gathering of what is a vital community for the future of Ireland's economy and indeed our country. And I want to thank Brian and Martina for the opportunity to be part of that conversation here today. In recent weeks, we've had a really productive pre-budget engagement, and it's wonderful to engage with you in this really impressive surrounding here in Avolon. I also want to acknowledge the work that Scale Ireland do in bringing together such a diverse range of people from across the startup and scaling community for what is a really valuable dialogue for government. In my remarks here this afternoon, I would like to emphasise the importance of your sector to the Irish economy and to reiterate our commitment as a government in supporting the continued growth and development of the potential that you represent for our country. As we're only a matter of weeks away from the budget, I want to set out in that context that measures we're introducing are will have to be important for families, for businesses, for enterprise, and also to build better communities. But most importantly, I'm looking forward to hearing directly from the people at the coalface of the Irish scaling community, the founders in the first panel, the funders in the second. And today I'm primarily here to listen and to engage and to get feedback and reflect on the journey you're on and what we can learn, how we can better respond from a policy context. It takes incredible resilience, determination, and commitment to set out as an entrepreneur. But more than that, it takes courage. And courage is more than bravery. Courage comes from the French word cœur, meaning heart. And indeed, as the French visual artist Matisse said, creativity takes courage. More and more as we look to the future, Ireland's future success will be defined by the innovation that comes from that creativity. And indeed, all of you are here today to be part of that. As Minister for Finance, I fully appreciate the contribution that the startup and scaling communities, and scale-up companies make to the Irish economy. My department last week published the latest set of exchequer returns with increases across VAT, corporation tax and income tax, which demonstrate the resilience of the Irish economic model. But we cannot be complacent. SMEs are the backbone of that success and the record number of people here employed in our country. There is sustained and whole of government commitment to supporting SMEs from all parts of our government, from the Department of Enterprise, IDA and Enterprise Ireland. But the community you represent are really complement the strength that we have from foreign direct investment, and that could change in the future. And the enormous potential you represent is vital to reinforce the resilience of our economy. But we face formidable challenges in front of us. The demographic shifts we have before us. We'll have 4 people working. Today we have 4 people working for every 1 person retired. That'll be at 2 people working for every 1 person that's retired by 2050, which demonstrates the huge cost that we're going to have in our economy in the years ahead. And many of you would know the challenges we have around deglobalization and how the trading patterns we've seen develop over decades will change into the future from where we've benefited from an open, competitive, efficient supply chain system globally to one where we've seen the Draghi report on competitiveness this week, where security of supply seems to supersede efficiency of supply. And we need to think about how that will affect Ireland, our export model, and the wider questions for our future. We have the twin digital and decarbonisation transitions that have profound implications for how our economy will work, but also the future of work in our economy and how we need to upskill retrain and ensure that we embrace the opportunities are there from AI and other areas, which are, I know, part of the wider opportunities from a scale and startup perspective. These are the defining forces that are shaping the thinking in my own department and how we can support SMEs and the startup community for the future. And each of these challenges are formidable, as I've said, and will require innovation to overcome. One practical example of support this week is a green transition finance product tailored specifically for SMEs and small mid-cap companies, which we're launching this week. A new €50 million loan fund is backed by the European Investment Fund, and I'll be meeting with them later today with the European Investment Bank, along with the Strategic Banking Corporation. And I know the SBCI are here in the room and are an important part of that funding jigsaw, along with ISIF, Enterprise Ireland, and others. If I turn to the context in which we're in for finalising Budget 2025, we're fortunate that our latest Exchequer returns provide us with the resources to continue to invest in our public services, while at the same time setting aside windfall tax receipts that will provide for future challenges. With 2 new investment funds, the Future Ireland Fund and the Infrastructure, Climate and Nature Fund. We have to learn from the past. If you look at the post-financial crash era, we had very little capital investment in the economy, and that's a constraint on the productive capacity of our economy for the future, and why the wider conversation on infrastructure is something I and government colleagues take really seriously on trying to advance delivery, certainty and predictability when it comes to our planning and our delivery systems, and the further requirement for reform in that context. And despite the headlines and the talk of healthy surpluses, we need to have sustainable public policy when it comes to spending decisions. We've grown our state by over 50% in the last 4 to 5 years, and the next 5 to 10 years will be about value for money, reform and efficiency around current expenditure in particular, and having a separate trajectory for capital spending when we look at our medium-term plans, so that we invest in our future and ensure that the state can partner with the ambition and the talent and the innovation that I know is in this room that wants to see energy, water, and the current constraints and development unlocked, so we have a much better future in the decades ahead. And you've all seen, I suppose, the elephant in the room, or the apple in the room, is what has dominated public discussion in the last 24 hours. And that's why, as a government, we won't be changing our budgetary or fiscal context when it comes to what will move from the escrow account to the Exchequer, and why we need to be really careful and sensible and strategic with how that one-off allocation will be made. And in fact, if you look at our surpluses that we're running and we're projected to run in the years ahead, we have a small-sized apple every year in surplus funds that will come back to the government with proper economic and financial management. And the core part of what we're trying to do is set aside that money for the future, so that we can continue to give certainty to the investment community, but also to future generations that will have challenges around cost in the economy, which will crystallize in the decades ahead. And that's why we'll have a wider conversation underpinned with proper long-term economic principles, and how we will use or not use the one-off allocation that we will receive. And that conversation is about to start. But when it comes to the different schemes we have, I know you're very familiar with. I'm not going to tell you about the ones we have, and I know there's specific feedback we receive about the complexity of certain schemes and the need to simplify and address some of the concerns around them in terms of but I know what are valued in terms of the employment investment incentive, the startup capital incentive, and the startup relief for entrepreneurs. And I also note the independent review of KEEP, the Key Employee Engagement Programme, is now being finalised, and a report is due shortly. So we're always looking to modernise and engage with colleagues across the business community. We're aware of the concerns in the wider investment and business community around costs in the economy, and making sure we address issues around competitiveness in infrastructure when it comes to our education system, and making sure we have a talent pool for the future, and also making sure with the changing world that our wider industrial and enterprise policy is fit for the future. So I want to listen. I'm going to conclude now. I want to listen to the discussions and get wider feedback on the priorities for the future. that for an established enterprise, issues around funding and attracting and retaining talent are central for the future. And government alone can't solve all of these issues, but we can be part of the solution and should be part of the solution to unlock a real innovation and enterprise in our economy. So in closing, I want to thank everyone in the team in Scale Ireland for putting today together, and also Ross and everyone in Avolon for hosting this gathering, and also to acknowledge your role in terms of the Sustainable Aviation Fuel Task Force. Again, that's an area of industrial policy we have to advance for the future, and opportunities for the future in terms of that will come from aviation and ensuring we're better connected, but we do so in a more sustainable way. So I appreciate everyone's attention and look forward to the engagement during today, and thanks everyone for attending.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister, and for your commitment to this sector. We really appreciate that. And now we are going to hear from representatives of 3 startup and scaling companies of various sizes with various ambitions, who will talk to us about their companies and also then some of the challenges before we talk in our second panel to 3 investors. And we're delighted to have such a great panel today. Firstly, we'd like to welcome Ciaran Cosgrave, the CEO of the global software engineering consultancy company Nearform, which is an independent team of engineers, designers and strategists who build scalable software solutions and digital capability for ambitious enterprises, not to be said slowly. Nearform was founded in Tremor in 2011 and since then has expanded its global team to over 400 people across the Americas and Europe, and its clients include some of the leading corporate companies across the world: Condé Nast, Charles River Laboratories, Lego, Puma, TELUS, Walmart. I'll stop. Brian.
We're also joined by Charlie Ardagh, Head of Partnerships for Tynes, who are an enterprise automation platform that has raised $150 million to date and employs 250 people across its Dublin headquarters and also in Boston and San Francisco. Its customers include the US Department of Energy, global corporates Mars, McKesson, Intercom, and Spotify. And interestingly, before joining Tynes, Charlie led the partnerships team at Meta. So he's one of those unusual people who's crossed the border from FDI to a fantastic Irish startup company.
And finally, we're joined by Sheelagh Brady, the CEO and co-founder of Kowroo, and that's an AI-powered personalized risk management platform which provides real-time personalized security alerts for business travelers. And Kowroo, which has plans to expand in other security areas and insurtech, is a deep tech spin-out from DCU, and we'll give them the nod because they're in the audience today. And to date, it has secured almost $1 million in funding from Enterprise Ireland's Commercialisation Fund, and it's opening its initial fundraising round shortly. So we're going to start with Ciaran, and it's a great story. You were set up 13 years ago in Tremor. Nearform is a great example of an Irish scaling company that has scaled from its base, a regional base, and with such global ambition and success. Can I ask you firstly about, the company's growth and its expansion, and of course about your future plans?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Martina. 13, it makes us into those awkward teenage years now. So maybe we're the older brother, the older sibling of the panel here. So hopefully we keep that exuberance and experimentation that I expect out of teenagers. In terms of, as you said, Nearform was founded in Tremor by 13 years ago by Ciaran O'Magene. And my own journey, I joined 4 years ago to help accelerate the growth. We were about 100 people at that time when I joined the company, but we have the same kind of culture, and Ross talked about the importance of culture. This really fundamental belief in the power of software when deployed in the right way to drive positive change in society and business and enduring impact. And that's kind of the culture that we've maintained. Since then, we've grown a little bit. So we're about 450 people now. Half of our revenues are in the US, with the other half in UK and Ireland. We're about 70 million in revenues, and we have kind of 15 large enterprises that we're engaged with on a consistent basis. So that's kind of the journey. Why do people come to Nearform? What do clients do? Well, we try to deploy high impact software engineering specialists, strategists, designers to drive enduring impact. So people like Lululemon or T-Mobile or the Irish government, what we're trying to do with them is anticipate not what their challenge is today, but what's the ambition where they want to get to tomorrow. So this long-term partnership that we drive with clients, and we have worked with, we're lucky enough and fortunate and very grateful to work with a number of our clients for 7, 8, 9 years, where we're constantly helping them evolve and innovate and bring new solutions to the market. That's kind of what we try to do at Nearform. In terms of where we see the opportunity and where we're expanding, great opportunity for us to continue to grow within the European market and also within North America. But, you know, as well as building these incredible digital products and platforms today, increasingly AI and data. So how do we make these products and platforms much more intelligent? How do we make them so that they can be our thought partner? How do we make them so that they can anticipate our needs and help us to be more productive, be more personalized, and drive forward? So that's the big area of opportunity that we see, building these intelligent products and platforms over the next 5 years of our teenage life.
Fantastic. Thank you. So turning to you, Charlie, I mean, Tynes has experienced phenomenal growth. You've raised 150 million. You're in the top 5 tech companies on the AWS marketplace globally out of something like 100,000 companies. And you, Owen, the founder, and all the team have very ambitious plans to expand significantly globally over the next few years. So you're not finished by any stage. So perhaps you could first explain how Tynes works and tell us a bit about its future plans.
Sure, I will. And before that, I just want to say just about Scale Ireland. I remember when meeting you, Brian, and even before Martina joined, with this idea of creating a platform for startups and for Indigenous tech, and it's just phenomenal, you know, what you've built here. And so, you know, from the kind of the founder, scene, it's phenomenally valuable to all of us. So, you know, well done on what you built so far.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what Tynes does, it goes into large enterprise customers and mainly into their security and IT teams, and identifies the most important workflows, the most important jobs to be done. And then we look at the repetitive, boring, most important jobs to be done that these really smart people are doing really begrudgingly. And we take Tynes and we automate all that away. And we turn these really smart, you know, bored people into really happy, productive, energized employees. And so unsurprisingly, customers love that. And like some that you've mentioned, and the logos that we've been able to attract are pretty phenomenal, and the trajectory is really strong for sure.
How important is it for Tynes that your headquarters is here in Ireland?
I like Owen and Thomas, who the founders are both Irish, and obviously that's their roots and all here. And we're really unashamedly Irish when we're out there. Like a lot of our, more 80%, I'd say, of our go-to-market, like our customer acquisition, is in the United States. And not that we show up in any kind of like cliched Irish way, but we're very unashamedly Irish. And that DNA is really important to our culture. So we have these values at Tynes that. One of them is soundness, which is a very uniquely Irish term. But you might know, like Google have like googliness and stuff. So, but in Tynes you have soundness, and it's really at the end of an interview. It's like, you know, where they sound. Yeah, okay, well that's important. Yeah. And you know, you wouldn't get that in any other country in the world. So, from that point of view, it's really important culturally. All of our product is built in Ireland. So all of our R&D, all of our engineering is all designed and built in Ireland. And you know, we'll finish the year at about 300 odd people, and it genuinely feels like that's just starting. So like, I know a lot of the emphasis here today is about creating you know, mechanisms and instruments and incentives from an investor side. What's really important to us in order to, like, you know, be the next Stripe, and indeed, like for any other like scale ups, to like, how do we make more Stripes? It's all about the people. If you don't have people, you have nothing to invest in. So that's probably the thing that's top of mind for us.
Thanks, Ray. And now to Sheelagh. You are the early stage startup on our panel. Can you tell us about Kowroo and how exactly it works, and also your trial partners, most of whom are very high profile, high international corporates?
So I like the way I can pick up on that personalization. We are building a personalized risk management platform where our first application will be to business travel. What that would look like, or where people are unfamiliar with the location. So what that might have looked like the morning after the Dublin riots would be people of colour, people that spoke a foreign language or a foreign accent, or people that wore clothes that may have indicated a certain religion or ethnicity would have been at a higher risk than probably the majority of us in the audience today. Being unfamiliar with the location, they wouldn't may necessarily have even heard the news that something got on the night before. Kowroo would have alerted them directly to their phone based on the personal characteristics they had given to the system and the data that we were processing about the security information and a myriad of different data sets. And I know many of you sitting here will disconnect and say, it doesn't matter to me. But how many of you really have thought about whether it was safe to go for a run, go for a walk, or even go for dinner alone in a location you weren't unfamiliar with? So try to put yourself in those people's shoes. So initially, as I say, our first application is in the business travel environment. Based on my background and my co-founder, I was a former guard. I then went on to work with the UN and the EU in places like Libya, Nigeria, Bosnia, Herzegovina, as did my co-founder. He worked in probably every conflict zone in the last 30 years. So we decided to go what we knew best. But I think the reason why Enterprise Ireland and we were a successful commercialization fund and returning money up to just under $1 million was because of the cross application into other sectors. The power of this is the model. The power of it's our ability to process the amount of data and therefore has application and at this stage in the insurtech and fintech markets. So say we're just ready to go to trial. So this daunting process of getting it out there. And we were lucky the security sector is small. Our global network has allowed us to bring many of the big companies here in Ireland through support letters for EI to show the early market validation and now up through demo stage and trials. Unfortunately, their lawyers are a little less willing to allow us to say their names yet, but I'd just say to watch this space. The great thing about Ireland is we have the companies here. We had their heads, know their heads of security or personally or through one person, and therefore have also gone into their US and headquarters. So the very ecosystem that startups can capitalize in here has been amazing.
Thank you very much, Sheelagh. And now I'm going to ask everyone, we're going to ask everyone on the panel to identify, I suppose, one of the main challenges for their companies or for the sector from a policy perspective or from an Ireland Inc. perspective. Ciaran.
I mean, we're a services business, Martina, so it's all about people. We don't have a product per se. We go out and we craft customizable solutions for the clients that we work with. So being able to attract, retain, motivate brilliant talent is critical for. We're lucky in Ireland that we have amazing talent here. Over many, many years, we've been investing in the sector, both through education and through the companies that come in. So there's amazing talent in Ireland, but that talent has huge choice, in particular post COVID and the real growth through work. So they can work anywhere. So being able to put really attractive compensation plans, especially when you're in a scale up where you have to worry about cash, you have to think about the right business. We want these teams to enjoy and celebrate with us the success that we're trying to grow, and being able to have, the appropriate employee investment schemes that they can involve in, or else option schemes like Keep. I think there's a big opportunity for us to make those more attractive for the people who are helping us build these incredible companies to scale and grow over the years. So that's a big area of talent, and being able to apply more people from Ireland.
Thanks, Ciaran. Charlie, how about times? What are the big issues for you?
Yeah, I would just plus one on like Keep. I would just be even pointier and quicker. I'd say it's just not fit for purpose. We couldn't have used it in any way, shape, or form for the sort of scale of ambition that we'd have. So that's definitely something to look at. And I would also add to that, like the capital gains tax treatment to attract those people, because without the people, you don't have anything to invest in. The other thing, which is, again, it's a bit of a tactical one, but from the R&D perspective, like I said, we do all of our R&D here. As an indigenous company, our ability to take advantage of R&D funding, not the tax credit. Now that's awesome. We should keep doing that. But just the funding grants that if we were a multinational, so if we were acquired tonight and tomorrow we were a multinational, we would be able to draw down R&D grants from the IDA in a way that we're completely excluded from as an Indigenous company. So that I think there's something there that we want to keep investing, keep doing R&D here, and not have to look anywhere else.
Thanks, Charlie. And then Sheelagh.
But I think every early stage startup will say finance, but for our point of view, we've gone on the thing that if you have a really good foundation, you control what you can control. So build a good product, build a good network, build a good users, and the money will come. But on one of the elements of creating that really strong foundation has been pre-revenue, but our costs are high. We don't have the finances to really get the financial advice that we should do. We were very lucky to be one of the startups that were brought into revenue through Scale Ireland to actually express our pain points, and the simplification of that financial advice would be great. But I think in the interim, access to really good international and Irish-based finance companies to actually make that incentivize that whether we can get grants, yes, it helps the companies. But the problem with some of these incentives that are out there or the grants that are available, if you do them at the wrong time, you actually can cause problems further down the line from an investment point of view. You might get through seed and pre-seed, but Series A, you realise you've made the wrong decision. And sadly, largely, many of us are taking that advice from other startups and not from the financial at the financial level we need. And I think that would be great. Not only would it benefit us, but I think it would put companies in a better position to be those stripes of the future.
Thank you very much. So, Minister, I suppose in terms of the feedback from our first panel, would you like to comment on what you've heard?
First of all, it's wonderful to see the growth and the innovation and the huge amount of further potential that's there, and it's really positive to see. But I think you've kind of the theme of people and how we keep and retain and attract talent to our country. 1 in 5 people working now in Ireland have come here. Which is important. Again, we re-emphasize the positivity and diversity that has brought around from a talent perspective. We need to make sure we're competitive generally on income tax, which is something the business community have raised with me. Certainly, we're still at a high income tax threshold, and I think every budget should make further progress there. And I think when it comes to some of the reference here around keep, I think both Ciaran and Charlie have mentioned that. Obviously, we have a review of that. And one thing I've looked at from a business tax perspective is there are certain schemes that have very low tax expenditure levels, which means they're not fulfilling their policy purpose if they're not being utilised by the wider business community. So the test for me as minister is to make sure that the schemes we announce and develop actually trigger tax expenditure to have the policy outcome that we seek. And in certain instances, there's been a mismatch there with some of the existing business tax options that have been referenced. And to Sheilagh's point, I know the wider issue of simplification is something that's a concern within the business community, and the complexity of certain schemes, structures and tax provisions, which is an ongoing priority within the department and for me. But also, I mean, if there are ideas on how we can strengthen access to advice and bridge that gap that you've referenced, I'm certainly interested in taking that away and working up proposals on supporting businesses and startups in your position to make further progress on that. But it's really great to see the growth and the ambition and the future opportunities in each of your stories that you've referenced.
And thank you very much, Minister. And also thank you to Ciaran, to Charlie and to Sheelagh for their contributions and for joining us today in different sectors, but with very interesting stories and success. And we wish you all the best into your future as we're going to change over to panel 2. And if everyone bears with us, would you give them all a round of applause?
Yeah, lovely to meet you. Keep in touch. Thanks, Charlie. Keep in touch. Appreciate that. Yeah, no, if there's any. Yeah, it's lovely to meet you, Sheelagh. Yeah, thanks, Aaron. I wish you well. Thank you.